Hello, I'm Jashikins, and welcome to another episode of Jash Reads. Tonight we are continuing my web series Chronicles of Gaia. We're like the one or two, or I think maybe three that actually watch this shit. Hey, I love your support. Okay. I don't know what happened there. Anyways. Chapter 3 Rise of the Rethai. If I had been partially revealed, I would have puffed up in happiness at the good news. The harsh noonday sun was shining down on native lakes, and I was seated on the edge of my bed with Frank. The lady giving us the good news stood in front of the window. "You can speak at any time, Buteo," the lady said with a small grin. "I know you and your husband have waited a long time, but you do need to make some sounds before everything is finalized." It had been 2 weeks since I had brought the Rethai to Native Lakes. 2 weeks of nothing out of the ordinary. 2 weeks for fellow Drethiville to finally stop questioning me as much. And now I had the best news I could ever get. The start of a family with the love of my life. I grasped his hands and he squeezed mine. I took comfort in his closeness and found the strength to make a reply to the lady. "So he won't be here for another month?" I asked. It was hard getting words out of my mouth in my happy state. "His parents are too heavily injured from a recent battle to take care of him," the lady replied. "They both grew up in Native Lakes and wanted him sent here. I know I should be sad about the parents' situation, but I wasn't. All that was on my mind was finally raising a family with Frank. I wasn't thinking about how sometimes injuries from parents would make them decide that it would be better for the child to be adopted so that they could grow up with non-disabled parents." "What made you decide on us?" Frank asked, joy barely contained in his voice. "You've been waiting for a child for such a long time," the lady replied as she took some papers out of a folder on a chair that had been moved up here for the meeting. "Besides that, the child is used to warrior parents. Buteo partially fills that bit of normalcy for the child, though the exact nature of his work doesn't match completely." "Has the child veiled yet?" "No, he hasn't, though he probably will within 2 to 3 years." Frank smiled a little, and I nodded at him. We were still very much hoping that he wouldn't veil into a seagull. We would accept our son if he veiled into a seagull, of course, but we could, always dream. That's all any of us could do at times. "Is that a problem?" the lady asked, probably noticing our silence. "No, of course not," Frank replied. "Just that'll be hard waiting a month to finally get to see him." "I understand your impatience," she said with a smile. "Everything will be done to make sure that your son arrives here safely. Do any of you have experience in dealing with a child separated from their parents?" "Some of my students have had that issue," I replied. "How have you dealt with it?" "By not imposing myself and waiting until they've asked for my help. I don't like to put myself in situations where I might do more harm than good. In reality, that wasn't fully the case. I didn't like to be disliked. I liked to be the one that others would turn to for advice. I liked to be respected and loathed any action that would discredit me. At the same time, though, I had an inability to stand down to injustice. What about you, Frank? Suddenly, my hands were over my ears as a loud alarm went off. After a moment to make sure Frank was okay, I raced to the window. Before I even reached the window, I had revealed so that my wings and tail feathers had formed. What is it? The lady, who had now curled into a ball on the floor, asked. I saw Han Falco and Dante Nevin racing along the train course. They were running at such a speed that Signal Native Lakes was under attack. It didn't take me too long to figure out who was doing the attacking. The Rethi, I said under my breath. All my goodwill towards them, enough to get them safety in my village, had resulted in betrayal. The ultimate betrayal of stabbing your rescuer in the back. Panic quickly set in as I remembered all the legends I had grown up with as a child. From the bedtime stories that scare children, as well as the histories that I've been taught, that I had taught countless children that would die as the Rethi exacted their revenge. We need to get out, I said, looking at the lady and then at Frank. If we have to run, we can do that better without being hampered by these walls. Can you fly? Frank asked the lady, and she shook her head. I was glad that at least one of us was caring about her. I couldn't. All I could think of was keeping Frank alive so that we could live our lives together. I didn't know if Native Lakes would last the attack, and dearly hoped that the legends about the Rethi were fabricated. Though I doubted that part. I'll watch from the roof, I said, and climbed out the window as I heard Frank helping the lady. I could have flown up onto the roof, but I didn't want to waste my energy. I didn't know how much fighting would be done, and all I could do was conserve the majority of my strength until later. Climbing was a little hard due to both my fear and the fact that I hadn't climbed on a roof since I had been a child. After what seemed like ages, I got on the very top and spread my wings. Down below, I saw chaos as some Drethiville were just realizing the severity of the situation. They probably thought that the alarm was for an attack outside the village, as there was no alarm on Gaia to indicate a Rethi attack. The Rethi? Frank asked as his familiar wing flaps alerted me to his presence. I assume so, I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. Why now? I shrugged as I had no good answer. My husband and I deserved as peaceful as our archmistress would allow us, life with our adopted son. It was beyond painful for me to push my hopes aside so I could focus on the battle at hand. You need to get your weapons, Frank said, and I cringed. I didn't want to leave his side, not now. The world would be changing, and I wanted him by my side while it did. He wasn't as well trained as me, and I worried more than he could ever know, that something would happen to him. I'll be fine, Frank said in a gentle voice. I'll stay out of trouble until you return. I looked at his lips and the bald eagle wings that were now on his back. I started to lean in to kiss him and then pulled back. If I gave myself one more second, I would be unable to leave his side. Without looking back at him, I took to the skies. As my wings opened to catch the wind, I noticed a very easy time rising high into the sky. I looked around quickly for any signs of fires. That's the only thing I could think of that would cause my easy rise. I wish I hadn't looked around, as down below me, a massacre was starting. During certain times of the year, especially when a child had chosen an animal to veil into, holograms would parade through the streets. These holograms were able to have an impact in the world so that joy could be had by all. Other times, in times of war, they could be turned into weapons. Usually they were turned into weapons against the enemies of native lakes. But now they were going after their citizens. A group of 5 small children rushed towards a hologram of a lion, and it turned towards them. At first it seemed innocent, but then it growled. The children stepped back as they didn't know how to react. They didn't know why I was angry at them. Maybe they even thought that they had done something wrong. I forced myself to look, to make myself certain of the horrors that the wreath could inflict, as the lion tore one child apart, and then the next. As it roared after its final victim died, I could hear screams from across the village, so I knew that this wasn't an isolated case. Flying even quicker now, praying to Fang that Frank didn't try to help. I heard the screams as if they were moving through me, like they were infecting the very reality that I lived in. I dove down so that I could hear the yells and to see if I could glean any information on what the Wreathai's plans were. The Wreathai are trying to send out a signal. A woman's voice yelled out as quickly as her life passed away. Her dying yell was meant for a man who didn't live that long either. When I landed by one of the waterfalls, all I saw were corpses. I averted my eyes when I figured they were dead. I rushed to where I knew my weapon was and tried to push the images from my mind. I had to pretend, just for a moment, that everything was going to be alright and no one was dying today. As I made sure my quiver wouldn't fall off, I remembered what I had heard the woman yell before she had died. The school was the best place to send a signal, though there were 2 other places in Native Lakes. I forced my wings to work and was soon heading towards the school. I hadn't flown by the school on my way to the waterfalls as I had wanted to check out a possible fire. Looking in the distance, I saw smoke, and I hurried towards my destination. I could only focus on one thing at a time. Frank! I yelled out as I saw him trying to fight off a hologram, a kid in his arms. I was about to shoot an arrow at the hologram, though I knew I wouldn't disable it in time, when he moved out of the way of danger, and then the hologram ran off with the child's head. I told you to stay safe, I yelled out as I landed while he just clutched the headless corpse. I had to help, he whispered. I know, I replied with a sigh. Let's work on getting to the school. The Wreathai might be there. We could stop this war here and now. Frank just nodded, and I took the corpse from him, placing it gently on the ground. As we took to the skies, I could see that the fire was spreading. I could even feel the heat and knew that it was only a matter of time until the fire consumed the entire village. a matter of time until the only home I ever knew was gone. Screams filled the air nearly as quickly as the scent of burning Drethival flesh did. Frank's flight pattern became unstable as I could see him trying to not vomit. Times like these reminded me that the Council of Ant had a point of making me a warrior. I could put all the pain and anguish to the back of my mind. I didn't like how easily I could, but it was a good thing in this moment. When we reached the school, I didn't see any warriors except 3 dead ones. Why isn't anyone helping? Frank asked, and then vomited, nearly falling out of the sky while doing so. The other warriors are at the other signal locations, I said as we continued to circle. I wanted to make sure there weren't any surprises when we landed. They probably just got an alert that a signal was being launched, but not where. The wreath I learned quickly. Sending a signal should have taken the wreath a while to learn, which meant the 2 weeks were just them waiting for their moment. I dove down and then pulled up once a hologram appeared out of the ground. The tiger hologram roared after me as Frank attempted to distract it. I landed a small distance away and hoped that wouldn't notice me. I hoped that would be too distracted attacking Frank. Holograms didn't react to physical attacks like breath, but there were ways to make them not as deadly. Unfortunately, the only way I knew how to do that was by shooting at it, and I only had a limited number of arrows. Focusing on one of its knees, I got ready to shoot, all the while hoping that Frank didn't move too much. My arrow went off course as 3 lion holograms attacked me, sweat dripping off my body as the fire consumed even more of native legs. As I dodged attack after attack, I realized that the amount of screens probably meant that the shields were up and trapping my fellow villagers inside. Would I die here no matter what I did? Would anyone figure a way to escape in all the panic? It was hard to push away all my doubts, and the holograms nearly managed to kill me. Frank kept yelling my name, but I had to give up even my love for him, as it made me fear, and I couldn't spare those feelings right now. I shot whenever I had a chance, sometimes missing, as I also had to avoid shooting the love of my life. The love who didn't have a weapon to attack the holograms with, but did the best he could with what he had. After what seemed like a lifetime, I managed to disable 2 of the holograms. The remaining roared, and I crouched down with my wings spread, an instinct to warn before attacking. Not like the things before me would be intimidated. They hadn't been programmed with fear. As they rushed towards me, I jumped up, flapping my wings, and they managed to pull me back down by my tail feathers. I rolled away from them as they let go. It would be useless to fly away now, as I didn't have enough tail feathers to make a clean escape. I could fly away, but not in an intense situation such as this. I dodged their attacks and went to pick up the arrows I had used, taking mere seconds to check if they were still usable. Some of the tips were too damaged, and I threw them at the holograms as I got an arrow ready. Buteo! I heard Frank yell as I disabled one of the holograms, which left only one. Frank dove down to distract the final hologram, and I prepared my arrow to make the kill. My love was successful in distracting the hologram. I did my best to hold my arrow steady as the hologram gripped on one of his legs and pulled him down. I held my arrow steady as I knew I didn't have a clear shot. If I fired now, I would waste an arrow that might be the difference between my life and death. I felt so selfish as Frank tried to get away, and he cried out my name in a trembling voice. I wanted to do something as the hologram bit into his skull, blood and brain going through the air before it landed on the ground, the sound being like fanfare for the arrow that finally disabled the hologram. The hologram wavered into nothing, the blood and bone on his once physical teeth rained down. Wiping the tears from my eyes, I focused on the mission. I felt like vomiting as the fresh sounds of Frank's dying screams came to me. At the time he needed me the most, I had abandoned him. But I couldn't focus on it now, as all of Gaia could soon be in danger. But why did the plan need saving if Frank wasn't there by my side? I readied another arrow and walked slowly into the school. Going through the small building was a quick affair. Not a pleasant one. I kept expecting the wreathite to jump out as quiet sounds came to my ears. The blowing of the wind as I opened the door and the sporadic buzzing of electrical equipment greeted my entrance. "Wreathite scum, come out," I said, the loss of Frank fueling my anger. I turned the final corner and was greeted by the sight of two dead Wreathite. There was a dead Wreathite veil across the room with its hands revealed into paws, though I couldn't tell what species it was. Walking slowly to the Wreathite, I saw their bodies mauled and a fired gun lying in one of their hands. It must have killed itself after sending the signal. I hadn't gone over to the transmitter as the sounds it was making. I hadn't gone over to the transmitter as the sounds it was making made it clear that the signal had already been sent. I hadn't accomplished anything today. I had let Frank die, let the signal be sent, and hadn't had the good fortunes of killing a Wreathite. Even though I wanted to lie there until the fire enveloped me, I knew I had to move. Maybe it was because of a dress need to live. Maybe it was because I needed to honor Frank's memory. Maybe it was because I wanted to kill Wreathite. Or maybe it was something else that made me move. Once I left the building, I flew up as the fire started to come after me. I flapped my wings, even as I thought I should have given Frank one last kiss. I flew past the waterfalls and attempted to slam into the shield. But I failed at that. I flew through one of the only holes in the shield until I found a few survivors by the tree. I landed by Han, Falco, Dante Nevin, Nadia Kabalis, and Adai Boris. We stood by the mark of Native Lakes' territory as we watched our home burn. And that's a really fucking, happy chapter. I hope you all watched this when you were down, so, you could just get nice and happy. I had one person comment before that this chapter's events seemed to be happening a little faster, and originally this wasn't going to be a web series. I was going to release ebooks, but then I wanted to try to lure people to donate to my Patreon, so I turned it into a web series. And so it was going to be around 10, each book was going to be around 10,000 words, so you have to have the plot progress in each book, and yeah, so that's why this happened so fast. I'm sort of glad to get the big pain out of the way. I mean, with the first two chapters, it was very quick, but I wanted to give a very good look at what a normal life is, except for for a few things. It was just like, hey, that something happened, this is how we go about our day. showing you the characters, showing you more characters than would actually survive. So yeah, and this happened. And I wanted this chapter since this is really the big event that really gets the main plot of the series going. So I mean, there's the Rethite finding, of course, is an event, but this is the event that actually drives everything forward, that makes the characters act like they do. And so it was going to be a horrific and traumatic experience for them, and they're going to hold these scars for the rest of their lives. So I need to make sure that, you know, the readers would see that. So I'm sort of a writer that doesn't really take things halfway. I really find it hard to find like a pleasant medium. So it's like, okay, horrific, I'm going to get traumatizing here. So, damn it, I couldn't eat. So, please feel free to discuss the chapter with me. Please, you know, comment below. Let me know what you're thinking. Remember, no major spoilers, minor spoilers, okay? And if you're watching this on YouTube, there's a link in the description to go to for, you know, to my Ask box on Tumblr. If you want to ask any spoiler questions, you know, that's the place to go. YouTube is all about, you know, just non-spoilery stuff. Of course, as the writer of the one that who's planned a bunch of shit of chapters that haven't been released yet, the spoilers will only include released chapters. So, yeah. As the big writer. Crappy piece of shit. But anyways, there's my, like, feel-good moment of the day. If you would like to read this web series for yourself, to experience it yourself, then there's a link in the description to the blog, so you can see that. It's the summary of the series, and then on the link in the sidebar things, wherever the fuck they are, you can actually go to the table of contents. You can see the most recent chapter, yada yada yada. And if you're thinking of, you might be away from your computer and you might want to read Chronicles of Gaia, say like you're on a plane trip and you want to waste like half an hour. There's a link in the description to where you can get a PRC file of Chronicles of Gaia. That's what I've been reading from. It's, mind you, this isn't professionally done, not even halfway done. Next volume, this is volume 1. Next volume will be done with little more care, maybe a lot more care even. So, you know, wanted to give people an option. It's PRC files, and so it's you know, Kindle products you can read it on. Also, please subscribe to my channel and also like this video. Please, I need attention. That's why I blog. I need people to notice me. You know? I'm lonely. Not totally lonely, so, you know. Ta-da! Oh, sorry, I think it froze up for like half a second there. Even losers like me can get married. I'm engaged currently, still need to move in. Yeah. Should move in later this year, or soon this year. So, Yeah. And on Tuesday, I'm going to be doing the outro video for... Oh, hang on. I might delay the outro video for Animorphs to the Visitor until Thursday, depending how late out I am with my fiance. He was supposed to come today, but then he got a case of the 6, but he should be okay by Tuesday. So I might be going Tuesday. So depending on how late I'm out, which probably won't be that late because he still has an hour or two drive home, I might be delaying it Thursday. So just be aware, if the outro video for Animorphs number 2, The Visitor, is not out Tuesday, it will be out Thursday. And when I say like Tuesday and Thursdays, I actually mean like Wednesdays at like 2 or 3 a.m. It's just that I don't count it to actually be a new day until I fall asleep and wake up. So yeah. A bunch of you were probably confused about that. Like, Jash, you're always saying this day and it's always that day. I'm like, oh, maybe. Doesn't feel like a Monday until I wake up. So yeah, just be aware of that. But the outro video for Animorphs number 2 will be out this week. And if I get Animorphs number 2, The Visitor's outro video out Tuesday, I'll begin Animorphs number 3 intro video out Thursday. And for the Animorphs number 2 video, please remember you still have time to submit questions. I really would like to have some audience participation. So if you watched my reading of Animorphs number 2 and you want to ask questions or give give observations, please tell me. If you've read Animorphs number 2, The Visitor by Kay Applegate, also give me questions and observations about the book. And here's the time. I'm sorry, I got distracted. But this is the time when I drink a little, and you can join in by, picking up your favorite alcohol, liquor, or whatever the fuck's lying around. And if you don't drink for whatever reason, if you don't drink for whatever reason, drink, like I'm drinking chocolate milk, there's water, there's a bunch of actually healthy things to drink. Did any of us know? Like, where the fuck was the secret? I mean, dude. So, here's to Rev Resner, my fiance, feeling better. Here's hoping for all of us to have energy to make it through the week. Not to be like it's the end of Monday and then you're like, is it Friday yet? Yeah. I just have a feeling it's going to be a hard week for me because I still have to deal with getting an appointment at a doctor and see how many other hoops they can send me through. Woo! So, until next video, which might be Tuesday, it might be Thursday, goodbye.